Welcome to the realm of brokenness. It's intriguing to observe that over 90% of our viewers actively engage with our videos without subscribing. If these stories resonate with you and you desire more, please click the subscribe button and turn on notifications. With just a quick action, you can help us create even more remarkable content tailored to your preferences. I once held the belief that love, once solidified, could weather any storm, that a bond once formed was unbreakable. However, I was mistaken. Love is not unyielding like stone, rather is delicate like glass. In the right light, it shines with exquisite beauty, but the smallest crack can lead to its complete shattering. Thomas and I have navigated an 80-year-long marriage together. 8 decades filled with routine, sleepless nights, mundane conversations, and lingering silences. He approached life with the precision of an architect, logical and systematic, while I embraced the role of a dedicated paramedic, consistently changing and driven by my emotions. Eventually, the space between us grew to the point where it felt like we existed in separate worlds. This realization came slowly, noticing subtle shifts in his behavior when I returned home tired from the day. His attention barely lifted, affection turned into quick pecks, and our once lively conversations became brief exchanges. Then, on a rainy evening, Julian entered my life unexpectedly after a motorcycle accident. With a cracked rib, a dislocated shoulder, and a playful smile despite the pain, he joked about being under my care for a while. His warmth and friendly banter made me feel truly understood for the first time in what seemed like forever. Despite knowing I should keep my distance, I couldn't resist. Julian had a remarkable talent for making moments feel timeless. He paid attention to details beyond just the words I said. Also, the silences I left unfilled. He inquired about the books that captured my heart, the days that tested my resolve, and the moments that brought me joy. In his presence, I transcended the roles of a paramedic and a wife. I was Claire, and I had lost touch with that sensation. It began as a mere whisper. I stayed in his hospital room longer than needed. I found myself laughing far too readily. I anticipated my work with a fervor I hadn't felt in years. Initially, I persuaded myself it was innocuous, that there was nothing amiss in relishing the presence of another. Yet, beneath the surface, I was aware of the way my heart raced at the sight of his name on a chart, the way my stomach danced when he uttered my name. It was an emotion that seemed to belong to the realm of first love rather than to a woman bound by marriage. One evening, while I was monitoring his vitals, he grasped my wrist, lingering just a moment longer than necessary. "You seem weary," he murmured gently. "You dedicate yourself to the need. Who takes care of you?" I should have kept my distance. Instead, I whispered no one. Julian was discharged a week later, but that was not the end. He found me on social media. His first message was simple: "I missed you, Claire the nurse." As I read his words, my heart raced in anticipation. I could have ignored it, deleted it, or pretended it didn't happen, but I didn't. One message turned into 2, then 10, forming a continuous thread of conversation woven into my daily life. Our talks never touched on Daniel. We never set boundaries. It was just the two of us for a while. One night, Julian asked me to join him for coffee as friends, he said. I wanted to trust him, to believe in my own decisions. When I arrived, he was already there, his eyes filled with joy upon seeing me. Our conversation extended for hours as we stood next to my car, the outside world fading into a hazy backdrop. A smile graced his lips as he expressed, in a barely audible voice, how much he enjoyed our time together. "I had a wonderful time too," I replied, feeling a surge of emotions. I should have looked into his eyes. I should have paid more attention to Claire. Suddenly, a complaint was brought to my attention. I took a deep breath, trying to understand. It was a confidential report outlining inappropriate interactions with a patient. My heart sank, feeling the ground shift beneath my feet. "That's preposterous," I managed to stammer out. The loud voice betrayed a sense of vulnerability. He sternly mentioned how seriously patient boundaries are taken, informing me that I was suspended effective immediately. Leaving the hospital, a fog enveloped my mind. Thoughts swirled as I made my way through the door, only to find Daniel waiting for me, holding my phone. "You misled me," he said, shattering the semblance of normalcy in an instant. Daniel kept his composure, not raising his voice or making any sudden movements. Inging items about in some inexplicable way that only deepened the situation. The weight of his serene despair was intolerable. "How much longer, Claire?" His voice was heavy, laden with a mix of fury and sorrow. "For how long have you been deceiving me?" Tears stung my eyes, yet I held them at bay. "It was never my intention to cause you pain." He emitted a sound that echoed emptiness. "Yet you did. Silence lingered between us, raw and exposed. Tell me the truth, he said after what seemed like an eternity. What is the reason behind this? I found myself without a response that could possibly resonate. Loneliness enveloped me. I confess, my voice scarcely rising above a whisper. Dana let out a sharp breath. Did you really believe he could mend? That it transcended that notion that simply occurred. His countenance was somber. Absolutely not, Claire. Affairs are not mere coincidences. They are choices, intentional, recurring decisions. His words struck with a force greater than any blow, for he was indeed correct. In the cloak of night, he packed his belongings and slipped away. The next day, I found myself jobless. In just 24 hours, I lost everything dear to me. My partner, my career, my reputation. The idea of contacting Julian flashed in my mind, but the thought unsettled me. He was not the answer, just a distraction. Then Lisa appeared at my door, resolute with folded arms. Enough, she stated. It's time to rebuild. But what was left to rebuild? Only emptiness remained. Lisa's unwavering words weighed heavily on my heart as she urged me to move forward. Reluctantly, I began the journey. Therapy was a harsh experience and starting anew was daunting, but I pushed through. I wrote a candid letter to Daniel, not for forgiveness, but to share my truth. I secured a job at a clinic and, most importantly, learned the importance of self-forgiveness. The journey ahead was far from easy, but with each passing moment, I made the decision to move forward. Taking a deep breath, I left the past behind and embraced the new beginning. It wasn't a choice, but a necessary step I had to take. The most difficult part wasn't the loss of my marriage, job, or reputation, but facing my own inner demons. I grappled with my reflection, haunted by the decisions that led me to this point. Nights seemed endless, filled with unanswered questions and uncertainty. Did I truly love Daniel? Could things have been different if I had talked to him instead of seeking solace elsewhere? Was my regret genuine or merely fueled by being caught? Accepting the clinic job offer was a blessing, even though it felt like a step back. There, I found a refuge from the judgment and whispers of my past. Yet I couldn't shake off the self-criticism that loomed over me whenever I walked through the doors. In the patient's room, I felt the weight of my past actions bearing down on me. I told myself that I had evolved from that person, but a part of me still feared that I had not fully changed. In the meantime, Daniel had drifted away from my life. I debated reaching out to him, but struggled to find the right words after pouring my heart out in the letter. The reality was clear. He owed me nothing and deserved better. Then one night he called. As I stared at my phone, my heart raced. I had never expected this day to come. After a moment of silence, his voice came through the line, calm and steady, but with a hint of detachment. I want to let you know that I filed for divorce, he said. I took a deep breath, knowing the papers would arrive soon. Please sign the documents, he added. Please return them as soon as possible. My throat tightened as I realized this was the moment I had been dreading. Dear Daniel, in that instance of uncertainty, I struggled to put my thoughts into words. I'm sorry, I began. I understand, he replied, but apologies could not change the past. There was a long pause before the conversation drifted into the dissolution of our marriage. The process was straightforward legally, with no children or major assets to divide. However, emotionally, it felt like a slow, painful journey. Our once shared apartment now felt empty, a mere shell of our past life. Lisa, my friend, pushed me to keep moving forward. She refused to let me drown in sadness. Get dressed, we're going out, she'd say, dragging me out for coffee or walks, reminding me that life continued despite my mistakes. You need to forgive yourself, she insisted. One evening, as we relaxed on my couch with a bottle of wine between us, I opened up about my uncertainty about the future. I then sought out knowledge and decided to take action. Therapy became my essential support system. My therapist, Dr. Patel, didn't offer easy answers, but instead presented me with challenging truths. Claire, you're not a villain, but your decisions have been driven by selfishness. Fully embrace that before you can move forward, she advised. It was a hard truth to swallow, but necessary for my progress. As time passed, the weight of my guilt slowly lessened, though it never fully disappeared. One day, upon returning from work, I checked the mail and found an envelope containing the divorce papers. I brought them inside, placed them on the kitchen table, and stared at them for what seemed like an eternity. This moment marked the end of my marriage, the final act in our union waiting for my signature. With a trembling hand, I picked up the pen without hesitation and began to write my name. Upon the conclusion of the divorce, a profound transformation took place within me. I shed the old version of myself, the one who once sought validation in the wrong places and allowed loneliness to cloud her judgment. Despite my imperfections on this healing journey, I emerged stronger and more resilient. Sitting outside as the sun dipped below the horizon, the peaceful beauty of the evening enveloped me, offering a rare moment of tranquility. Suddenly, a message from Daniel lit up my phone screen. "I hope this finds you well." Those simple words stirred up deep emotions within me. Though I knew that returning to the past was not an option, I held on to the notion that forgiveness might one day find its way into our hearts. With a heavy yet hopeful heart, I replied, "I am here. I hope you are well too." As I hit send, a sense of liberation washed over me. With a final exhale, I signed the divorce papers, embracing a new chapter. As time passed, the intensity of the pain gradually subsided, ushering in a period of transformation and personal growth. Walking home at dusk from the office one day, I felt a shift within me. A message from Daniel on my vibrating phone caught my attention. "I hope you are well." Taking a moment to contemplate, I replied with a simple reassurance that I was indeed fine. A wave of tranquility washed over me, replacing any traces of regret or yearning with a newfound sense of calm. This moment marked a turning point, instilling in me the belief that everything would eventually be okay. The conclusion of my journey was not marked by grand gestures or perfect endings, but rather by accepting reality and the chance for a fresh start. Our mistakes do not define us. It is our actions in the aftermath that truly matter. What are your reflections on this? Have you experienced the process of rebuilding after a breakup before? After a challenging misstep, place a comma. After below, place a period. After you, place a comma. After resonating with you, place a comma. After liking, place a comma. After subscribing, place a comma. After sharing, place a comma.